Hello, my name is Maria Kelly, and I am here with Phil Matalucci, and we are back with another video on equity compensation. In this video, we are going to review stock options. So at their core, stock options are simply a contract that gives you the right to buy company shares at a preset price at some point in the future. They typically vest over multiple years and come with a 10-year expiration window. There are two primary types of equity stock options: NSOs, or non-qualified stock options, and ISOs, or incentive stock options. How they differ is how they are taxed. So I'm going to start by explaining NSOs, which tend to be a bit easier to digest. So first and foremost, they are not taxed when they are granted to you. When it comes to exercising, you have the option: do I hold or do I want to sell? We typically prefer to hold as close to expiration and then sell. The reason is because at your time of exercise, that profit is taxed at ordinary income and subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes. So if you sell then, there potentially can be no additional tax owed. That cash is yours. If you do decide to hold and wait, then you could be subject to additional short or long-term capital gains. So in summary, these tend to be less tax efficient because, again, the profit is always taxed at ordinary income taxes. And then that could also be, depending on your bracket, 37%. And with that, you want to consider your existing exposure and any future grants to lead you into your decision of do you sell or hold for the future. Phil, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit more about ISOs and how they do differ.
Yeah, so ISOs are where it gets a little bit more fun on the tax side of things. So first off, similar to NSOs, they are not taxed when they're granted to you. And also similar to NSOs, you're faced with that similar decision. Do I want to hold the shares or do I want to sell them? I will say with the ISOs, though, there is more of a tax consideration, and it really starts with two key dates. Those two dates are 2 years from when they are granted to you and 1 year from when you decide to exercise those options. If you do decide to hold on to them beyond both of those dates and you satisfy both of those holding periods, that entire profit is going to be taxed as long-term capital gains, which is a major advantage on the ISO side of things that you don't have with NSOs. So let's just say if you don't satisfy both of those dates, so whether you sell it within 2 years of when it's granted to you or within 1 year from when you decide to exercise. And even, let's just say, if you decided to sell the shares right away, all of that profit will count as ordinary income because this is what's known as a disqualifying disposition. In this case, what that actually means is the spread or the difference between what the shares were granted to you at and what the current price is at the time of sale is all going to count as ordinary income. So that big tax advantage that I just mentioned goes out the window, and now you're also paying that higher potential capital or ordinary income rate as you are with NSOs. So now let's say back on the benefit side of things. Let's say you continue to hold the shares, you satisfy both of those holding requirements. The actual event of exercising the ISOs itself is not a direct or regular taxable event. But what does now come into play is what's known as the alternative minimum tax, or AMT. Even though you didn't sell anything, you just decided to exercise the shares and then you wanted to hold on to them a little bit longer, you could potentially owe what's known as AMT. So as far as AMT goes, there are a handful of items themselves that are not taxable items under the regular tax code, but they do fall into this AMT territory, and exercising and holding ISOs just happens to be one of those events that falls under potential AMT category. So how it actually works is the IRS looks at that paper gain. So again, you didn't actually sell anything. What was the difference in profit? And that counts towards the AMT system. I think another good way to look at AMT is that it's essentially a prepayment on your taxes, because although you didn't sell anything, you're not taking home the cash today. If you do decide to sell those same shares in the future as long-term capital gains, you can actually get an AMT credit back on those same shares. So again, it's a way to essentially prepay on taxes. There's a lot of strategy to try and avoid it. I think in some cases it makes sense. In other cases, again, that AMT credit is something that can be useful in the future. So this is why ISO planning can be complex, and it's again not necessarily as straightforward as either the RSUs, RSAs, or even the NSOs that Maria you just touched on, because you may owe taxes before you actually even receive the cash, and that's why it's important to have a good sound strategy in place. So just to kind of summarize things, ISOs can be extremely tax efficient if you satisfy those 2 holding periods that I'd mentioned earlier. If you are able to kind of manage or mitigate potential AMT exposure, and then also just making sure that whatever decision you do make aligns with your existing concentration to whichever company or stock this is. And again, even just from the risk perspective, making sure that you're kind of balancing that out as well. And again, there can be some unexpected tax bills with actually exercising ISO. So just being able to understand, or at least have someone that does understand some of the potential AMT implications is also key. So Maria, why don't you just kind of summarize and bring it home for us on ISOs and NSOs?
Yes, thank you for all of that information. So to that exact point, everything that we've shared here today is exactly why it's not just a decision of, do I exercise and sell or hold? There's a lot of other planning that goes into this decision making. And that is why you don't want to just look at it as a singular question or a singular piece of your entire financial picture, right? So even a small decision, or what may seem like a small decision, could have a huge tax impact that you were not expecting. So if you have equity compensation that you have any questions of, or are not familiar with how or what to do with it, reach out to us. We are here to help. We will look at your overall situation and find what is the best option for you and your needs. Thank you for watching, and hope to talk to you guys soon.